Hello and welcome to Professor Pincushion. In this tutorial we're going to be doing pattern 6751 by McCall's. We're going to be focusing on creating top B, which is this one right here. Make sure that you pick up the right size envelope and the sizes are listed here on the side. Here's an example of the top we'll be making today. It's a loose fitting pullover top that can be made with woven or knit fabric. We'll be using bias tape to finish the neckline and armholes. The straps in the back cross over for a unique detail. You can find the body measurement chart located on the top flap of the envelope, and this is going to tell you what size they recommend that you cut out determined by your measurements. So you're going to take your measurements of bust, waist, and hip, and this one on top is all in inches, and you're going to try to fit it in a column, and that column is going to tell your size, which is up here on the top. So if you're in the 12 to 14 range, you're going to cut out a size medium. Next, I like to look at the back of the pattern envelope because this is going to tell me what type of fabrics they suggest we use for this pattern. And you can see here at the top is designed for light to medium weight wovens or knits. Because it's a loose fitting top, you can either use woven fabrics or you can use knit. It's not essential that you use stretchy fabric. And they give some examples right here of ones that you can use. Also, we have notions. So they're saying optional, you can use the 1/2 inch single fold bias tape. And I'm going to take them up on their suggestion. I'm actually going to use it. So if I'm doing top B, I'm going to need 3.5 yards of this. Also, don't forget to pick up some matching thread. Once you have your fabric and know what size you're going to cut out, then we can determine how much fabric you're going to need. So first you're going to find your view in this column. So I'm going to do view B, so I only need to look at this row. Then it's broken up even further by the width of the fabric. So if you're doing 45 inch width fabric or 60 inch width fabric, you're going to need to get a different length of measurement. So I'm doing 60 inches in view B, so I'm just going to go across until I find my size, and I'm going to do a size small. So I'm going to go down the small column across the 60 inch in B. So that's going to tell me that I need 1 yard of fabric. The first page of the directions is going to help us figure out which pattern pieces we need to cut out. And you can see all the pattern pieces that are located inside our envelope that's printed on the tissue paper. Underneath here, you're going to see a breakdown. So the number here is associated with the number you see up here. So number 1 is the pocket. And you'll notice that there'll be an A behind it. This means it's for view A. So if I'm doing top B, I don't need to worry about cutting out this piece because it's only for top A. Now you'll see number 2, the front piece, which is this piece right here, does not have a letter behind it. That means you need to cut it out for all views. So it doesn't matter what top you're making, everybody needs to cut out piece number 2. Then for the back, I just need to find the one that has the B next to it. So for this, I would only need to cut out piece number 2 and piece number 4. Your pattern pieces are printed on the tissue paper inside the envelope. In the middle of each pattern, there's going to be a number, and this number goes back to the list we were just looking at, and underneath it's going to say what it is and what view it's for. So this just reinforces that I need to cut out this one if I'm doing top B. When you're cutting it out, you're going to see solid lines, and these are the lines you're cutting to do an outline around the pattern, and you can either cut right on the line or just on the other side of the line. I usually like to see the line when I'm cutting it out. Sometimes there'll be several lines. Each one of these is a different size. So this one right here is for the extra small, and you can see I cut the one above it, which would be the small. The one for the medium you can't see because I cut that one off. So you definitely want to make sure that you cut on the right size. Also, you may have things called notches printed on the pattern, which look like little triangles that are usually right on the line that you're cutting out. So either you want to cut into them and create little inverted triangles, or you can do like I did, which I cut outward. You definitely want to make some sort of indication that there is a notch because this is going to come important when we're placing our pieces together. After our pattern pieces are cut out, we can then refer to the cutting layout instruction, which is also located on page 1. So this is showing you a diagram and how they suggest you lay out your pattern pieces so you lay them out correctly and also you make the most of your fabric. You can see the little diagram here. What this is showing you is the fabric is folded in half, where we have the fold on one side and then the salvages or the ends of the fabric on the other. You're going to fold your fabric so you have the wrong side of the fabric on the outside and the right side on the inside. We're cutting out only 2 pieces, and you'll see that piece number 2 is located right on that fold. If you look at the actual pattern piece, there's going to be an indication on the piece showing you which side needs to be placed on the fold. And you'll notice that this has polka dots. Why this is white? That is because they want you to place this piece so it's upside down, so the print is facing down towards the fabric. When you cut this out, you're going to end up with a single piece that is twice the size of this piece here. That's why they're placing it on the fold. And I usually like to place my straight pins going parallel to the edge of the pattern piece. If you do it perpendicular, you might have a problem when you're trying to cut out and then the pins end up getting in the way of your scissors. Now you'll notice piece number 4 is not placed on the fold, so this means that you need to cut out piece number 4 while it's folded in half, and then you end up with 2 pieces of number 4. You'll notice that it's kind of at an angle. If you look at the pattern piece, there will be a grain line, and they want you to place the grain line so it's straight with the edge, but that causes the piece to be cut on a slant or on the bias, which is going to be important because we want that back piece to have a little bit of stretch to it. If you look at your pattern pieces, sometimes you'll see special marks that are printed directly on the pattern, and these need to be transferred to your fabric pieces. Either use fabric marker or fabric chalk or some sort of indication. So on your fabric pieces, you'll actually see something that looks like this. Now you only need to do the one for your size. So if I'm doing a small, I would only need to transfer this triangle. We're almost done with prep. The last thing I like to do is look over the sewing information and glossary just so I can find some information I'm going to need before I start sewing my garment. The first important thing is going to be seam allowances. So this is telling us that our seam allowance for this project is 5/8 of an inch. If they say just do a seam, we're always going to assume it's 5/8 of an inch unless in the directions they specifically state something else. We also have this sewing information fabric key guide. So this is going to tell us how to read the pictures. And we're going to look to see what's going to be the right side, what's going to be the wrong side. We don't have to worry about interfacing or aligning. So if I'm looking at this picture right here, because it's shaded just like this, that means that I'm looking at the right side of the picture. Once we have that done, we can then go ahead and move on to the directions. When starting your directions, make sure that you locate the one that has your view at the top. So that's going to be the start of the top that you're making. For this tutorial, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read each of the steps and then I'm going to demonstrate what you need to do for that step. Step 1, E-stitch side edges of front above notches. So the first thing we're going to be working with is the front piece, and this is going to be piece number 2, and this is the one that you cut out on the fold. So when you open it, it's twice the size and you can't see the whole thing, but I'm just going to show you what you're doing on this side, and you're going to do the same exact thing on the other side as well. So all they want you to do is, you'll see on your pattern, we have a double notch here, and you should have that on your fabric as well. Let's go ahead and remove this pattern. They want you to do an E-stitch from this double notch all the way to the top of where the armhole is. So that means you're going to do it 5/8 of an inch away from the edge, starting about here and doing the largest stitch on your machine, no back stitch from here to here. You can see that I'm going to do my basting stitch, or my E-stitch, which is basically a basting stitch, in a contrasting color, which is fine because we're eventually going to take the stitch out. It's only going to help us later when we're trying to ease this area to fit another area of our top. Don't forget that you don't need to do any back stitches. Step 2, pin back sections right sides together, matching notches and circles. Stitch center back seam. We're now going to be working with the back piece, which is piece number 4, of which you should have cut out 2 of this out of your fabric. And I'm going to have one piece right side up, bring in the same number 4 piece, and I'm going to put it right side to right side. And all you're going to be pinning and lining up is the center back seam that has the triple notch. So I'm going to make sure that the top here matches, the triple notch matches, and then also this bottom corner here at the bottom matches. You're going to go ahead, pin this whole section, and you're going to stitch your 5/8 seam allowance. I'm going to sew my seam just on the side that has the triple notch, and I'm just using a regular stitch, so just a straight stitch. Don't forget to back stitch on both the bottom of the shirt and then the top. You always back stitch so our stitches don't come out. After you finish stitching this, go ahead and press your seams open. Step 3, pin back to fronted sides, right sides together, matching notches, adjust ease, based stitch. Pin left side of front to right back at shoulders, stitch. Pin right side of front to left back at shoulders, crossing over previous shoulder, stitch. This is our front piece, the one that has the ease stitches on the side, this side, and also this side over here. So now you're going to grab your back piece that we just did, our seam, and you're going to lay it on top of the front piece, right sides together. Making sure that everything is going to be going in the same direction because we're going to be matching up our side seams here. So to do that, I'm going to lay this side seam over here, matching the top, the bottom, and the double notch we have on the side. And I'm going to be doing the same thing on this side over here. It's a little far from me, so I will fix it when I can. So for now, let's just look at this side. When you're pinning it and you're matching up the double notch in the top, you may find that you have a little bit more fabric in this area than you do in your back piece. So that's why we created our easing stitches. So you're just going to take one of your threads here and you're going to pull the ease stitch just to kind of start easing or gathering this area. You're not trying to create any big wrinkles or anything like that. Just pull it a little bit and then just kind of distribute it. Then you'll find this area here will start to shrink. And when you've done it just enough that these areas actually meet and they line up perfectly, go ahead and pin it. So I'm going to pin here to here, do a basting stitch just to kind of hold this area with your gathering. That's why they want you to do a basting stitch first. And then you're going to do a stitch at the 5/8 mark again on this side, and you're going to do the same thing on this side over here, and then you can press your seams open. Next, let's look at the straps. So all they want you to do is the straps that are on the back piece are going to cross over. So they want you to do the right strap of the back goes with the left strap of the front. And again, you're just going to be matching the sides and the single notch, and you're going to be stitching a 5/8 seam allowance. Then you're taking the next one and it's crossing over the one you just created and you're going over to this side. And again, you're going to go ahead and do your 5/8 seam allowance on this side as well, and then press both your seams open. Next, we're going to be finishing our armhole and neckline area. So they give you the option here. Either you can do a narrow hem or you can use the bias tape. Because I'm going to be doing bias tape, I'm going to go ahead and skip to step 5. So step number 5 says, stay stitch outer edges of top. All you need to do all along the whole neckline and the armhole and your straps and everything, you're going to stitch a 1/2 inch from the edge. And you're not stitching anything together. You're keeping it separate, so you're only doing a single layer. You're doing a regular length stitch, and you're just going to go up at the 1/2 inch mark and just follow all the raw edges of your top of the shirt. So any place where you have a raw edge here at the top, you're going to do a stay stitch. The stay stitch is meant to prep the neckline area because we're going to be working with it for the next few steps. And it's to help the neckline and armhole area maintain its shape and it doesn't get distorted. Because of that, the stay stitch is going to stay in our garment. We're not ever going to remove it. And I'm going to go ahead and use a matching color thread. Step 6, open out one folded edge of bias tape. Press out crease and pre-shape tape to match curve of neck and armhole edges, pressing lightly. All they want you to do is you're going to take your pre-packaged bias tape, and this is the single fold bias tape, 1/2 inch in width, and just on one edge, you're going to open it and you're going to press it. And I've actually already started on my other end, so you can see what it looks like. So you're pressing it so it's flat, but you're still able to see this crease because this is going to come into play in the next step. So you definitely want to be able to see this crease after you press it. Step 7, Pin bias tape to neck and armhole edges, placing crease along seam line, turning under ends to meet at one side seam as shown. Stitch along crease, trim top seam allowance even with bias tape. Here's my top. It's right side out, and we have the neckline, the armhole, and we have the straps here. So any place that we did a stay stitch, we're now going to be pinning our bias tape to it. Now on one end of your bias tape, you're going to fold over about 1/4 inch. So we have a nice clean edge. And I'm actually going to start, let me just move this up a little bit, at one of my side seams here. Now they want you to place it so that the crease that you have at the top of your bias tape ends up at the 5/8 line. So measuring from the top here, 5/8 of an inch down, that's where your crease should end up. What I figured is I measured where my crease is compared to the top of my bias tape, and that's 1/4 inch. So if I make sure that the top of my bias tape ends up 3/8 of an inch down from the top of my shirt here, I have my sewing gauge, then that should be 5/8 of an inch. It's just, for me, is the easiest way to figure out where it's supposed to be. So I'm just carefully going to shape this, and be sure that you're not stretching your bias tape too much. You may have to stretch it a little bit to get around curves. Just don't overstretch it. So I measured down 3/8 of an inch, making sure that the top of my bias tape hits that mark. And then I pin it. And I'm going to do this again all the way around any area that I have a stay stitch. So that's the armholes, the neckline, and the back straps. Once you pin your bias tape all the way around and you're back to where you started, you can go ahead and with the raw edge of the bias tape fold it over to the wrong side of the bias tape. So then the two folded edges are meeting each other. Next, you're going to sew your bias tape to your garment, and you're going to stitch right in that crease line that we have there. And again, you're just doing a regular straight stitch and going all the way around the whole bias tape. To finish up step 7, all you need to do is trim off this fabric part so that the top of the fabric meets the top of the bias tape. And I've already done it on part of it. So you can see here, bias tape. I don't trim the bias tape, just the fabric, so that they both line up. Step 8, turn bias tape to inside along seam. Press, baste in place, slip stitch ends on outside stitch close to basted edge. I turned my shirt inside out, so we're looking at the wrong side of the shirt. Here is the right side with our bias tape. All they want you to do is you're just folding your bias tape so that all of it appears on the wrong side. So I'm just folding it over. And the top of the bias tape can be like right on that fold line. So if I flip this over to the right side, you're not going to see the bias tape at all. So it's going to give us a nice finished edge to our top along the neckline and the armholes. And I'm just going to pin it into place and do this all along the whole thing. And then I would press it just so it looks nice and neat. What we're going to do afterwards is we're going to baste right on that bottom folded edge right down here. I'm just doing my basting stitch right along this bottom folded edge of the bias tape. That's going to be the largest stitch on your machine. I'm just trying to stay as close to the edge as possible. It's just to hold our bias tape in place, and we will eventually do a top stitch on the right side, but we're just going to do this part first, and I'm just going to go all the way around the whole bottom edge. Next, we're going to slip stitch the ends of our bias tape together. So these are the ends that we had folded over on each side and then put them next to each other. So this one's going to be done by hand, and you should use a matching thread. I'm going to go ahead and use a contrasting thread so it'll be a little bit easier for you to see. So I'm just taking my needle and going through on one side right on the fold there. And we actually only need to stitch this little bit right here, so it shouldn't take you long at all. Tuck my knot in there so we don't see it. All right, so you see it on the one side. So now I'm just going to grab a little bit on the opposite side. and pull them together. And now I'm going to go back again to the top side and back down to the bottom side. And you can see I'm pretty much already done, and I've only done 3 stitches, so it shouldn't take you long at all. And then once I get to the end, go ahead and tie a knot. Then we can move on to the next part. Flip your shirt right side out, and I'm going to be stitching right alongside my basting stitch. So I'm stitching between the basting stitch and the edge of my garment here, because we want to make sure that our stitches fall onto our bias tape that's on the inside of the garment. So I'm just doing a regular stitch and just going right alongside that basting stitch. Step 9, finish lower edge of top with a 5/8 inch narrow hem. You're going to turn your shirt wrong side out, and we're going to finish off this top by creating a narrow hem down on the bottom edge. So I'm just going to fold up from the right side to the wrong side 5/8 of an inch. So I'm going to grab my sewing gauge so I can measure this, and I'm going to pin it into place all the way around the whole bottom edge of the top. After I finish pinning it, go ahead and press this bottom edge so we get a nice crease, because that's going to come in handy for the next part. So after I have this whole thing pinned, we'll pretend like I pinned the whole thing. You're going to come back, and you can remove maybe 1 pin at a time. You're going to take this top edge, you're going to fold it over till it meets your crease down here at the bottom, and then you're going to repin it, and you can press it again if you want after you go all the way around. And then the last thing you need to do, just go back to your machine, and you're going to stitch right along that top fold line, and then your top will be done. Don't forget to remove your basting stitches and any fabric markers. Look at the pretty top we made. It's perfect for the warmer weather and can be dressed up or dressed down. This has been McCall's 6751. Enjoy your new top. Make sure to check out our other videos and visit ProfessorPincushion.com to view our complete library with well over 150 sewing video tutorials. New tutorials are released regularly, so make sure to subscribe to be notified of the next release. Thanks for watching!